Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Swedish on the home side, half Norwegian on the away side, and both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel several times before, albeit the Swedish brewery quite a little bit more often than the Norwegian one. Now, both of these breweries, I would say, are very well known for the different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but the Norwegian brewery is also very well known for their stouts, I would say, too. But both of these breweries, very, very capable and very recognisable names in their respective craft beer scenes in their countries. So, yeah, this one is quite an interesting thing, because it's always cool when these guys collaborate. But the beer itself is a style that I know both of these breweries can do very well. It's one of the Swedish breweries' latest releases through Stigbergets here in Sweden, and it is also meant to just be a very nice beer. So, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up toward Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get the Gothenburg catchphrase in when we review the Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. But for this review, we are going to return to the wonderful Stigbergets Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Fjords. It comes in at 8.3% ABV, and this is another New England hazy, imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. But it's also brewed in collaboration with Amundsen Bryggeri, who come from Oslo up in Norway. So yeah, another very, very good brewery, I have to say. But this beer was released as part of the Lokalt Osmoskalik assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for April of 2023, so we are reviewing this one a few weeks after it came out because obviously I was away in Japan. But like I say, I've heard very, very good things about this beer. Both of these breweries are very good when it comes to the New England hazies, so this should be a pretty damn nice beer actually. But let's crack on then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, however, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Stigbergets Bryggeri and from Amundsen Bryggeri. There will no doubt be more added to those lists at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go to the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and you'll find this one in the Swedish playlist and the Norwegian playlist since it is dual nationality, and there are many playlists there from other countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri first off, since they are the home brewery in this case. So, Stigbergets Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsson. So these guys owned two bars that shared the one kitchen. This is the Bar Kino and the Hagabjörn's Cafe, which can be found on Linnegatan in the city, and they both opened back in 2007. And this building is actually an independent cinema, which I didn't realise until I actually went to visit it back in 2019. So you can check out my out and about video that I did there. But originally, the idea that they had was to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars, but this led to them kegging the beer and selling it on to other pubs, and eventually to bottling the beers, which began in November of 2014. So the original beers that they were producing were mainly English and German styles, but they soon started to experiment with more hoppy American styles of beer, and this was where Stigbergets really started to make their name. So the original head brewer was Ole Andersson, who is now of course or has always been one of the co-owners of OO Brewing, and he stayed with the company until April of 2017, and it was him that developed the GBG Beer Week beer for 2016, which is now known as the new and improved GBG Beer Week beer, and also the Amazing Haze, which are two of the kind of flagship beers from Stigbergets Bryggeri, and they were two of a few New England IPAs that really put the style on the map in Sweden. Narangi, of course, came out at the same time under his OO Brewing brand. But he was replaced in April of 2017 for a short period of time by Barnaby Struve, who was one of the vice presidents at Three Floyds in Munster in Indiana in the US, quite close to Chicago, but that was only for about 3 or 4 months or something like that. But around this time they moved to a new brewery at Party Halarna, where they were brewing 5,000 litre batches at a time, and they also started working on their first sour beers there as well. And at this point they changed from the 330 millilitre bottles to the 440 millilitre cans, and this allowed them to export their beers across the European continent. But these days they've got a brew team of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, and they've also got Lucas Munreid as well, who used to work for All In Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in the area. And also Ida Ivarsson is there as well, who used to brew for Bryghus Niton down in Karlshamn here in Blekinge here in the south of Sweden, but she's involved in distilling things now for Stigbergets from what I understand. But they've recently, as of summer 2020, they moved to a new brewery in the Renun area, and they're brewing some lambic beer there now, and apparently they're looking at opening up a bar on site and introducing swimming facilities and stuff like this too. The articles I've read about this talk about the new brewery being an experienced brewery, so I'll need to go up to Gothenburg and obviously check this out at some stage. They opened up a bar in Stockholm earlier in 2020, and I think that was April of 2020 as well, and they also have their own folk ale shop in Gothenburg too. And for those of you watching outside of Sweden, anything that is 3.5% and above has to be sold in the national monopoly, which is Systembolaget. Anything that is 3.5% and below can be sold in the supermarkets, and it's these things that are called folk ale. But yeah, over the last few years they've continued to develop different recipes. They've been putting out a lot of different styles as well. And as of April 2023, when we're filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 240 different kinds of beer. So yeah, that is a quick summary of Stigbergets Bryggeri. If you want to learn more about these guys, again, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on to the Norwegian side of things then, and Amundsen Bryggeri. So Amundsen Bryggeri, as I've told you already, are based in Oslo in Norway, and this brewery is actually part of the Akerhus group, which owns a number of bars and restaurants around Oslo. And the main men in this company are Ole Johan Tollefsen, Bore Jensen and Tom Erik Andresen. So the first brewery that they had was part of a gastropub in Stortingsgatan, very close to the Oslo town hall actually, and this was just a very small operation, and the key man in getting this established was Tom Alfred Oimo, who had been a home brewer for a number of years. But the brewery expanded, and they had a production facility in the Nydalen area of the city, and by 2015 they were producing around 200,000 litres of beer per year, and they'd become quite established across Norway. But in 2016 the parent company purchased the property company Hauketo Eindom, and with this they acquired the Bjørnarudveien Fjords property in the Hauketo area in the southern part of Oslo. So this big facility was turned into a 3,500 square metre brewery, and the brewing there began in late 2016, and the new brewery capacity started off at around 1 million litres of beer per year. So the brewery equipment in there comes from Braukon in Germany, and the canning and bottling lines were brought in from Italy, but the total investment in this site was apparently 16 million Norwegian kroner. But the managing director of the brewery is Jeffrey Jansen van Vuren, and Matthew Thomas and John Hudson are the others involved in the daily running of the brewery, which runs a 42 hectolitre brew kit. But the artwork on the Amundsen cans is of course very distinctive. This is designed by the American Peter John de Villiers. You're not really seeing it in this one of course, because this is a Stigbergets beer first and foremost, but yeah, the Amundsen artwork is very, very distinctive. But in 2019 they produced 9,500 hectolitres of beer, and I believe that's gone up to 11 what was that? I think 11,000 hectolitres of beer per year. So they're producing about 1.1 million litres of beer per year, if I'm remembering my conversions correctly. But as of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 250 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. And as I say, they are best known for the different kinds of New England hazy IPAs, but also for the Dessert in a Can Stout series as well. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Amundsen Bryggeri for the moment. If you do want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that they've done. But yeah, that's everything we need to say about the brewery histories in this video. Let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up, and I have to say it is very, very nice. The artwork on this one is by Neil Paling, who does a lot of stuff for Stigbergets, of course, but yeah, it's very nice. There you can see the Stigbergets and Amundsen symbols there. Amundsen Bryggeri, of course, take their name from Roald Amundsen, who was quite a famous Norwegian explorer. It was one of the poles. He was one of the first ones to reach either the North or South Pole. I forget which one. But yeah, always nice, as I say, and the artwork is lovely. I do need to get up to Norway and just explore a little bit more. But yeah, the Fjords double IPA at 8.3% ABV. The hops in this one are Motueka, Strata, Columbus and Mosaic. We know all of these hops quite well. Motueka, New Zealand hop, 8% alpha acid, usually quite a big oily limey character that it gives you. Strata, an American hop, gives you quite a little bit of melon in my experience, but also some nice kind of strawberry notes. I think, yeah, 14 or 15% alpha acid. Columbus, an American hop, about 12% alpha acid, usually used as a bittering hop because it's got this very spicy floral aromatic character. And then Mosaic, another American hop at 14% alpha acid, big juicy tangerine notes for the most part. But yeah, this beer, 440ml can, I think I paid about 60 Swedish krona for this one, so that is about 8.3. That, yeah, 60 kroner is about about €6, about £5.50 sterling, somewhere in the region of like $6.50, $7 American, something like that. But for an 8.3%er, I think that's a pretty decent price, to be honest, and that's one of the good things about Systembolaget. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. The Fjords New England Double IPA at 8.3% ABV. Let's do this. And two very good breweries involved in this one too. Probably two of the best known breweries in the Nordic countries, actually. So, yes. Anyway, so you can see this beer is poured pretty much as you would expect from a New England hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So before the head disappears in this one, we can see that it's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would actually say cream coloured head on this one. It's fading away to be a very thin foamy layer, but you've got that nice thicker ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look very, very nice. Yeah, in terms of the colour of this beer then, if we shine the light through this, I would say that this has got a very rich and dark yellow colour to it. So yeah, the way this goes together is quite nice. Definitely reminds me of like a mixed tropical fruit juice. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because their appearance just reminds me of that. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. And any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different kinds of IPA. So yeah, this one for me, in terms of the level of haziness in this beer, it is one of the superior and gloopier ones I've come across in recent times. And the level of haze in these, of course, depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use as well. This can vary from brewery to brewery, recipe to recipe, and so on. There's not really a rule about how much haze you're going to get in the beer. But yeah, this one is pretty damn soupy and gloopy. As I said, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, just a little bit going up toward the surface there, and the head has incidentally faded away to be a nice sort of thin foamy layer, and you've just got that ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, it looks nice, I have to say, this one. It does look very good. So, yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the appearance of this beer. Let's move on and have a little look at the aroma and see what it's all about. Oh yeah, it smells pretty nice actually. So yeah, first impression of this one then. This is a very kind of smooth and juicy New England IPA. As I've always said, there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to the flavours of New England IPAs. So you've got the kind of farmhousey, grainy side of things, the rye leaning, the farmhousey yeasty side, sorry, the rye leaning, grainy side of things. Those two are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, we can say that. You've also got the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, and also the sweeter side of things as well. So yeah, these are the 6 elements of flavour you should talk about when it comes to New England IPAs, at least in my opinion, and that's just my experience. You guys might disagree, but yeah, for me, this one comes across, there's a lot of kind of bready, I get a lot of kind of barley malt bread in this one. I do get a bit of wheat and a bit of the oat, but for me it strikes me as more of a barley malt leaning New England IPA, this one. The green component is a little bit floral, but leaning more toward a wet grassy side of things. Then you've got a lot of kind of juicy, wet fruity character coming out of this one as well. So that's definitely quite interesting with this beer. Actually, very smooth and juicy New England IPA, I would say. But yeah, let's try and break this down and just describe the aroma for you a little bit more in depth. So let's do this. The malty side first. You absolutely have a little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this beer. So yeah, lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. And then, yeah, so lovely fresh white bready bread crust sitting on top of that. You do get a nice little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream crackery character in there, and little elements of woodiness. But then above all of that, you have more of a, you have a little bit of a more kind of fluffy white bready character to this one, and that of course is the barley malt. I think it said on the Stigbergets website that it's Simpson's extra pale malt that's been used in this one. So it's got a nice kind of fluffy bready character. There's a wee touch of sweetness to it, but also a little bit of dryness in there as well. So that's interesting for me. And you can just get a little hint of like a brown bready character too. But on top of that, you have on top of that, you have a slightly, you can smell the wheat just densifying the beer out, and you get a little touch of the kind of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose as well, which is quite a common thing to find with these beers. So a little bit of wheaty bitiness in there, and then you've got the oats in this one. Now, as I've always said, oats are a very good indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. The fresher the beer is, the creamier and the creamier and smooth they're going to be, and then the older the beer is, the drier they're going to be. So yeah, the creamy oat, you are getting quite a bit of creamy oaty character out of this one, but we know this beer is a little bit older, so you can smell the dryness starting to come through. But nevertheless, you are getting a lot of nice, you're getting a lot of nice kind of creamy oaty character out of this one. There's a little bit of sweetness in there as well. Yeah, so there's a little bit of kind of sweet. Yeah, there's a wee bit of a kind of oaty, creamy character in this one, but then above that you're starting to get a wee bit of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type notes coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really very, very nice. Yeah, malt base in this is quite interesting. It's making me thirsty. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things, then let's move on and have a look at that. I think we said everything we need to about the malt base in this one. Very smooth and bready, and just a little tiny touch of sweetness to it. The hoppy side of things, as I said earlier, the green component leans toward a more kind of wet and grassy sort of vibe. And I would say, as I've always said in these videos too, there are 3 different kinds of hoppings that you can get in these beers. So with IPAs, you have early addition hopping, which takes place in the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness. And you also have late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. And you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that is all flavour and that is all flavour and aroma. So yeah, New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2. West Coast IPAs use all 3. So yeah, that's the thing you have to think about there. And what that translates to in the aroma is that you've got a deeper and danker aroma and taste when it comes to the green component in West Coast IPAs, but you've got a brighter and softer green component in New England IPAs. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, the way that this goes together is quite interesting in that sense. So for me, there's a little touch of earthiness in there, which is going to come from the Mosaic. I'm not getting too much in the way of spiciness, which I would have expected from Columbus, I have to say, but maybe we'll get more of that in the flavour. But you have got a little bit of a bright floral aromaticity. There's also some kind of wet grassiness in there. And the grassiness is a little bit more sort of oily I would say, as well. So yeah, a little bit earthy, nice little bit of floral aromaticity. You've also got some wet grassiness coming out of this one. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really it's very nice in that, from that perspective. But yeah, the green component for me, it's mainly a little bit of floral character, but a lot of wet grassiness. I think we're actually going to get more out of the green component when we taste the beer. But let's have a look at the fruits now and just see what's going on here. So for me, it's interesting. I'm getting quite a little bit. I can smell a little bit of like soft apricot and a little bit of mango and stuff like that, which I wouldn't have expected from any of the hops involved in this one. But I do get a little bit of the melon from the strata. The fruity character in this beer is actually quite oily, to be honest with you. If we sugar it up, we get a little bit more out of it. Yeah, you definitely get the melon from the strata and the lime. When you sugar the beer up, you'll get the lime from the Motueka as well. So a lot of that going on. The melon's in there, the lime, and the you've got the melon from the strata, the lime from the Motueka, and you've also got the mosaic. You can get some of the orangey character from the mosaic, but when you let the beer settle, it does give you a little bit more of a slightly tropical, dry apricot-y type note. Maybe a little bit of like oily pear or something as well, to be honest with you. I have to say though, generally speaking, this beer is not the most pungent in terms of its aroma. Sometimes you get IPAs that jump out the glass at you. This one doesn't really do that. It's a lot more kind of subtle, to be honest with you. You really have to sugar this one up to try and get the aroma out of it. And I think that's fair to say. But yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time for us to try this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Fjords, an 8.3% double IPA brewed by Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg here in Sweden, in collaboration with Amundsen Bryggeri from Oslo up in Norway. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, I'm going to say that's very nice. The aroma kind of makes sense to me now, because it's quite a subtle aroma, but this is it's like a really wet and juicy IPA, this one, but it shows you quite a little bit of dryness. You've seen how long it was since I took a sip. You're starting to get more and more dryness out of this one now, the further into the aftertaste you go. So yeah, the way this goes together is very nice, actually. This gets a thumbs up from me. So, first impressions, I say, very soft and juicy and creamy. Shows more of its green component later on as well, and you do get more dryness out of it. But yeah, a nice IPA, definitely. So it's a thumbs up from me. So, yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really quite nice. We'll start off with the middle third of the palate in this one, as we always do. So, we'll start there. The backbone of your beer is that you have this lovely, soft, white bready bread crust. That's absolutely the backbone of the beer. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a more... you get a little touch of a more kind of woody character coming out of the beer, so there's a little bit of that. Then you have the Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of this. I'm getting a lot. It's kind of amazing how your palate can change over time, because I remember when I first started reviewing New England IPAs, I never really used to get this kind of crackery note out of these beers, but now I do. But yeah, you've got the bread crust, a little bit of wood, Jacob's cream cracker. Above that, I would say you've got a thinner layer of like a kind of wholemeal, brown bready sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, you've got a more wholemeal. You've got a more kind of wholemealy, brown bready sort of thing out of this one. Then you've got the fluffy white bread sitting on top of that, and the white bread has a little bit of sweetness to it, but also a little bit of dryness. I'm pretty sure I've had Simpson's Paleo Malt quite a bit, because it's quite distinctive actually. You know, if I was to taste this blind, I like to think I would say the bready character in this feels very familiar, but you know, you never know. I know the name Simpsons, contextual cues and all that jazz, but yeah, the bready character, as I say, a little bit of brown bread underneath and a fluffy white bready character, and you can feel the wheat sitting above that and just densifying everything out. And the wheat has just a little bit of bite to it actually on that middle third of your palate. You can feel that there, and then the oats sit on top of it. So if you go down the middle line of your tongue, there's a nice kind of oaty creaminess coming out of this one as well. So you can feel that oaty creamy character just going down the middle, going down the kind of middle line of your palate there. And as you move out toward the edges of your palate, it gives you a little bit more of a kind of dryness too, which is quite nice. So I like that. I really do like that about this particular beer. But the oaty character in this one, as I say, that's usually an indicator of how fresh the beer is. You are getting quite a bit of creaminess out of this one still. And then, yeah, in the middle of the palate, you've got a little circle there. You've got a little circle there with you've got a little circle there where it's a kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. And then as you move further out toward the edges of the palate, it's got a little bit of a more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how that goes together. But I would say this is not the sweetest of New England double IPAs that I've come across. This one is more, it is actually a little bit more like some of the old school Nordic New England IPAs. It's got a more bready and kind of creamy sort of thing. It really does remind me more of when this style first arrived on the scene. I don't know if it's my palate that's changing or it's the way the brewers are kind of brewing them, but you find, you know, for quite a while in Sweden, New England double IPAs got quite sweet, but now I find they're getting a bit more bready and yeasty and things like that. So yeah, it could be they're more bready and yeasty, you know, because saisons and things are getting more popular just now. So yeah, this is something to think about, a bit of food for thought actually. So yeah, the way it goes together is quite nice, this one, and I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate actually. So let's go on to the back third of your palate. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of bready build up in this one. You feel it's a kind of soft, fluffy white bread in there. You've got the back third of your palate in there. You can feel the base of it. You've got the bread crusty note in there. As I've always said, the more the more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So you can feel you've got the bread crust in there, it's a bit drier. You've got the cracker, which is a bit drier. You've got the brown bread sitting above that, the same layer, which is a little bit taller and more airy. And then you've got the white bread sitting above that, which is a little bit kind of more fluffy and airy as well. Then above everything else, you've got a sort of wheaty bitey character coming out of it. Then you have a more kind of farmhousey, yeasty side of things, which is quite interesting. So you've got this, the yeasty character sits above that. You've got the wheaty bitiness there, then the farmhousey yeast in there. So it's like a very light farmhousey kind of white bread, a little bit more grainy and a little bit kind of drier in a sense. And there's a wee touch of honeycomb to it as well. But then yeah, you've got that. You can definitely say that the back third of the palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, we'll have a wee look at the hoppy side of things now, the green component first. So, green component first then. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. So as you move further forward, yeah, you've got the earthiness in there. So that's from the mosaic, I would say. But as you move further forward, you can actually feel the Columbus kind of coming out of this a little bit more. But obviously, for me, Columbus was always used as a bittering hop in West Coast IPAs. It give you this big, spicy character. In the New England, it behaves quite differently. I'm guessing it's been added a bit later in the wort boil, because you can feel this kind of dry, floral character coming out of this one. You can feel the dryness and the spiciness just going forward, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more. It's a little bit lighter and a wee bit more kind of grassy and things like that. It's kind of a wet grassiness you get out of this one, but you can feel a little bit of this kind of muted spiciness almost from the Columbus along the sides of your palate. But yeah, front curve of your tongue, a kind of wetter grassiness coming out of the beer. But yeah, in terms of the in terms of the front third of your palate, then you've got a nice, the border region between front and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build-up in this one. And it's kind of white bready build-up with a little touch of brown bread. The base of that front third of your palate, it has a little bit more, it's got a little bit of a more kind of bread crusty sort of thing to it. You've got the brown bread in there and the white bread, and then above that you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So, the fruity side of your beer in this one is quite interesting, as I say. It's quite different in the way it goes together, because for me it's kind of almost strange a little bit to have a New England IPA that doesn't have so much of a kind of tropical fruit note to it. But what I would say about this one is that in the dead centre of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of like a mango-y, apricot-y sort of thing just lingering there, but everything else sits on top of that. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get the melon from the strata. You absolutely get the melon coming out of the strata in this one, which I think is really very, very nice. Big melony note in there. That kind of dominates the beer a little bit. Cashmere was always one that did that. You have to be very careful when you use cashmere because it can dominate. It really can kind of dominate the flavours of a beer, but Strata has a little bit more of a kind of mild melon quality to it. But yeah, melon on the back half of that front third of your palate, and as you move further forward you can feel the lime, the kind of juicy lime of the Motueka in the base, and then above that you get the tangerine oranges from the mosaic in this one, and there's just a little touch of a kind of strawberry-ish character which will come from the Strata as well. But the things that linger into the aftertaste is some of the spiciness. I think the spiciness gets bigger and drier the further into the aftertaste you go with this beer too. And then you've also got you've got the light. It's quite a limey, melony leaning IPA, this one, but you've just got a wee bit of orange in there and a bit of strawberry. I think the Motueka and the Strata kind of dominate this one, to be honest with you. So it's kind of wet, but it's still slightly oily at the same time, the fruity nature that you get out of this one. So that gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that about this one. So I like that, yeah, the way this goes together is quite nice. I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer, to be honest with you. So, yeah, let's round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel on this one then. So yeah, this is a kind of wet, but also kind of is wet at the same time, and it's got a slight oily slickness to it, but it's quite a creamy IPA. Behind that, I have to say. Overall, I would say that this one is it's kind of mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite, the carbonation is quite smooth with this one as well. Quite smooth actually. Yeah, IBU wise, I think this one's a wee bit more bitter. Maybe, pardon me, 40 or maybe 50 IBUs, and that's Columbus. You can feel the Columbus character of this one builds up a little bit. So 40 or 50 IBUs in this one, I would say. But always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt. It's my weakest point of beer reviewing. But yeah, you can feel the malt base in this one. It has a bit of dryness to it, which comes out more in the aftertaste. You've got a bit of smoothness in there and a wee bit of sweetness. But this is more like a kind of smooth, kind of bready type New England IPA, this one, rather than being overly creamy or overly sweet. And then the fruity side of the beer, like we said, is more kind of citrusy, like melon, lime being the dominant notes. And yeah, it's quite a wet, fruity character that you get out of this one. But overall, I think it's pretty nice. So I think we can leave it at that for for this review with this one. A really nice beer, this one, and quite interesting, quite different to what I've had from both of these breweries in the past. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Fjords, 8.3% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg and Amundsen Bryggeri in Oslo up in Norway. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both of these breweries as well. And we will no doubt return to both of them at some point in the very near future. But pardon me, an interesting beer. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Sláinte, skål, and cheers.